Got the best coaches in the game, we really ain't playing. We regroup up in the Slack chat where the coaches debrief. We be piecing these puzzles, occupy the chunk of the pie. Ain't no lie when we hit the block, helmet's casket is top. You be seeing helmet after helmet, helmet after helmet. First place, second place, fifth place, eighth place, 12th place, 15, 16, 20. So many helmets, you got blurred vision, we got too many. Take your check. Oh man, shit. They got us fucked up. Army, regroup. We pledge always to have that edge. We don't fire warning shots. Competition just drop. We locked and loaded before lock. Whatever the time, yeah. Do you even correlate?
Being the best requires a willingness to outwork your competition. There's always someone smarter, faster, sharper, more naturally gifted to come around.
All right, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to another Geeks Vegas Lines DFS and Betting Angles Breakdown presented by DFS Army and Sports Bet Army, where you get the best daily fantasy football and sports betting content in existence. We are also sponsored by No House Advantage, a new props for cash game where you can bet on your favorite props in a fantasy sort of GPP format. And the cool thing about that site is you can weigh each prop, so you can decide which ones you like the most, which ones you like the least. You can put weightings on them, 5-1. Really great site. Please check them out. Use promo code ARMY when you sign up. And we are in NFL Week 5. A crazy week, Corona affected. We're going to go through everything. With me, as always, is my partner in crime, the man with the $1 million quaff, John Statsational Alessia, representing Sports Bet Army. What's up, John?
What's going on, man? Got a cut today, so I appreciate it. Yeah, and then it was a little depressing though. The guy wanted to know if I was over 55 because I get the discount. I'm like, motherfucker. I'm like, don't let the gray hair fool you, man. I got quite a few years to go.
That's harsh, man. I still get asked for ID when I'm buying beer, and you're
get out of here.
You're over there being asked for your senior citizen discount, man.
You don't need ID. Just take your hat off.
I'm not taking it off. Come on now. So there we go. Week 5, we got some exciting things. Now, Week 4 was very, very interesting. How I've been on a great cash run this season. 3 weeks out of 4, literally crushed cash, including last week. And my only hiccup, so this is my best start ever, John. My only hiccup has been Week 3 with Deontay Johnson, the concussion that I just could not overcome.
It's tough in football. You can't take zeros in football and be too successful. The high stakes. Did you play the Dak? Did you play a Dak stack?
Not in cash, but in tournaments I did. In cash, I went with Ryan Fitzpatrick, my guy. Fitzy, 26 points, 5,400. Opened up my ability to go away from the Adam Troutman 0 at tight end that everybody took last week. Instead, I slapped Deron Waller in there. He got me 16 points, and that was the difference maker on the slate.
Yeah, the Troutman, he didn't get me on DraftKings, but he did get me on FanDuel. And
he's an even worse play on FanDuel. You cannot punt like that on FanDuel.
No. Well, I mean, it wasn't. Obviously, we were hoping for a little something. But that whole game, that whole game was a killer. Was a killer to me over on FanDuel. DraftKings was fine. The only thing I screwed up on DraftKings was not coming back. I had the Dak stack with Coop on DraftKings in the high stakes, but I came back with Landry. I didn't come back with Beckham.
Oh.
And the whole reason I did that is because I really had my heart set on Gesicki, who was just awful. I could have just dropped down, played a number of different cheaper tight ends, and then gone up the $700 or whatever it was to Beckham, and then I would have been really sitting pretty in the some of these big high stakes games. But cash. Then you kind of had to have Dak in those games to cash, and I did, so I can't complain too much. I'll tell you what the most unusual thing was. breaking even in mass entering the millie without anything near the top. That's difficult to do.
That's unheard of. You must have placed like 120 lineups in the.
I had a lot. Had a lot of lineups placed, but nothing challenging anything significant. So
yeah, that's well. I mean, you need to mix in. I did not play Mixon at all last week, and mea culpa. I didn't play him.
A lot of people didn't, but in the higher, he was high. He was slightly higher owned. I guess significant at that low in ownership, but he was like 5 to 6% owned in some of the higher stakes games, and 3 to 4% owned in the mass, the millie makers.
Very low owned, but I was on the right guys. I mean, the Mike Davis play was spectacular. Ron Jones Jr. He could have had a monster day.
Yep.
If he catches some of the targets, but he still had a really good game. Of course, the pay-ups didn't work that great. You needed Dalvin Cook, but Zeke and Kamara didn't kill you. Both got you 20 points. It's fine. Not winning a tournament with it, but fine. But if you pivoted off to Dalvin Cook, that was the way to win it. So a really fun week last week. I enjoyed it. It was fun. I had said on the show it would be fun making the lineups because there were so many enticing games. And while not all of them paid off, I think the biggest plus for me and my approach last week was going with Fitzpatrick over Russell Wilson and the Russell Wilson pass catchers because of a lot of the stuff I talked about on the sheet that I put out every week. Where I said, listen, Russ Wilson, the only way he's going off is if his opposition is also going off. That's just how he'd do. And so I actually played a little bit of Chris Carson, which really worked out because I kind of wanted to play against everybody who was jumping on the Wilson bandwagon. But, even with all that said, I did not threaten for a tournament win. But my history in DFS is I'll threaten for a tournament win like 2 or 3 times all season outside of like the prime times and slates like that where you're trying to win them every time and the showdowns. For the main slate, I'll probably, my goal is to win once, maybe twice over the course of the season, take one down, then I'm more than happy with how the season went.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. That's the way we look at the GPPs. You got to hit one, and that'll definitely make your year. It's funny you talk about Russell Wilson. I was trying to before we went on here. I just want to look at like the top 5 in the millie, top 5 quarterbacks in the millie. I was really looking to see what defenses were popping, and Russell Wilson hit. So I was looking at the top 5 quarterbacks in lineups that cashed in the millie, and Russell Wilson
or just
this season, this season so far. So Russell Wilson's hit now. He's been in the top 5. He was the second highest owned in week 1, and he played Atlanta, and Ryan was up there with him, right? So Ryan was 3rd. And then in the Dallas week, of course, he was 1 and Dak was 2. So yeah, you're right. When Wilson goes off, so does the opposing team, and vice versa. So if Wilson's not there, his defense, right? So when the defense gave up significant yardage or significant points to the opposing offense, Wilson was in there. So yeah, that's a really good observation. Really good way to look at it.
This is 9 years in or 8 years in to a dynasty with Russell Wilson as my every week quarterback. I have absolutely learned his ebbs and flows, and he's the most predictable of any quarterback for me in the entire football NFL. I know exactly what's going to happen in their games because it's so repetitive with him. So it's a really nice thing, and he's the ultimate game stack quarterback. But you can get exposure to him just by taking, if the other quarterback is that much cheaper, you just take them because you're getting the same exposure. That 1 week Matt Ryan might have been 1,000 cheaper than Wilson. Mm-hmm. I don't know, but you understand what I'm saying. Now, one other thing, I had a really interesting conversation in DFS Army Slack chat with some of our subscribers and members. They're talking about a little bit about how they've done so far, and it's a great time after 4 weeks into your season. I know we're not talking about the games yet. Give us a minute. This stuff is more important than breaking down the games. After 4 weeks, it's a great time to evaluate your process. What have you been doing? So for those of you guys watching this, I want to ask you, what have you been doing? How have you been attacking DFS this season? Are you bringing a disciplined approach, or are you all over the place throwing bullets at $3 entry tournaments and then wondering why you're not profitable? Because one of the biggest things that I always talk about, you're not going to be profitable doing that. John and I just said it right now. John just said something that was prolific, and if it got over your head, I want to go back to it. He said, I can't believe that I actually made a profit in the Millie Maker without essentially having like a top 20 lineup. John is the ultimate tournament player. And when he says that, you should listen. What he's saying is when you enter tournaments, GPPs, mass multi-entry, giant contests, okay, with a sexy looking top prize, but basically it's the gimmick. When you're entering those, you should expect to lose money. Every time you put an entry in that, you should be expecting to lose money because you will. Okay? You are always going to. Now, not every single time. We enter them because of that one occasion when you take one down. $100,000, $50,000. But you're probably going to have to spend like $200,000 in entries to get to that $150,000 win. That's what the odds say. So your goal is along the way of the $200,000 in entries. And John, you'd know better. Maybe that number I threw out is a little crazy, but it's probably way high. It's maybe less. But the point is, of that 200,000 entries, you hope to lose. You don't lose so much that you can make it back on that one win. And 200,000 is probably the wrong number. John, what's a reasonable expectation for how much money I should throw into? I will need to throw into $100,000 to first tournament before I can reasonably expect to win it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's going to vary on these. They're so huge. But if you're mass entering, I mean, I mass enter a lot of these big ones, and in the NFL, they're so top heavy. It's $1 million, sometimes $1 million to first.
Those are the worst.
With $100,000 to second. I mean, it's all on that first, and then I mean, you get down to maybe 10,000 for 10th place. I mean, there's a monstrous drop off. So for me, like even hitting, coming in 10th is not going to be significant if I'm mass entering, and it's going to cost me, $3,000 to enter that tournament. So yeah, I mean, those are luxuries because of the bankroll and other things I've hit where I'm like, you know what, we're gonna just take a stab at this, and I'm gonna put 3,000 into it and just hope to hit the million. But it's extremely difficult with the amount of entries in there. So I would. Like you say it all the time. Yeah, let's take a couple of bucks and throw it in, throw it at it. Kind of throw it at it. But for most people, I wouldn't suggest mass entering those. There are better tournaments to mass enter where it's. I mean, if you want to be a little bit more, have a little less volatility and variance in your bankroll. Look for the tournaments where the drop off from first to second and all the way down to 10th is just not nearly as significant, and then you'll have a better you'll have a better shot at it. But if you've got the bankroll to do it, sure, go ahead and do it. But not all of us can do that.
It's also it's important for me that people who are playing DFS set reasonable expectations for themselves, and I think that's one place where 90% of people don't. They don't understand that when you're entering the massive tournaments, you should not be expected to. Only 20% of the entrants cash, and most of those only get 1.5x on their money back. So the numbers don't make sense for being profitable, which is why we stress the most important thing that you do in DFS. If you want to, not everybody wants to be a profitable player, and that's fine if you don't. But if you're trying to do this and be profitable, investing most of your bankroll into giant tournaments, it's generally not going to work out. Some people are really, really spectacular at that, and that's fine. But 99% of us aren't, and we're much better off putting our bankroll into 50-50s, head-to-heads. And most importantly, you want your action, do tiny tournaments, what I call leagues, right? Or 3 max entries, which is where I focus a lot of my sheets each week. Leagues, 3 max. That means a contest with 30 people in it, or 55 people, or 130, or 225. They're winnable. I
always suggest whatever game you play, you should be playing the max that's allowed. So if you're in if you're going to play one lineup, find single entry tournaments to play.
But people find a $3 single entry with 40,000 entrants. That's not what I'm referring to.
Right? No. I get that.
Exactly. Like a contest that costs $27. Yeah, and there's like 60 people in it. And the reason is you can beat those 60 and you can actually win and be profitable. And you know what? It looks real sexy at the end of the week when you invested $46 and you took out $120, right? Did it pay off your mortgage? No, but that ain't happening. We're trying to play profitable. You'll feel good about yourself. You gain your confidence by having your bankroll go higher every week instead of lower. It doesn't have to be that way. DFS doesn't have to be that way.
No.
It's all about how you enter tournaments and the discipline you use. We teach it all the time here. And one thing I'm going to recommend for everybody watching this is go to dfsarmy.com and look up the Daily Fantasy Snipers Bankroll Challenge series of articles that he's been putting out. He's been doing a really disciplined approach, trying to grow a bankroll of 5K, and he's going through the process with everybody. It's really great stuff, and you learn a disciplined approach to the game. All right. Now that all that has been said, let's get into it. The way we work this show, Geeks Vegas Lines, DFS and Betting Angles Breakdown, is we pick a core 4 games of the week to go in depth on for the Sunday slate and the Sunday main slate on DraftKings and FanDuel, and then we'll do a brief round for all of the other games on that slate. Are you ready, John?
As ready as I'm going to be.
All right. You guys ready in the audience? Here we go. Core 4 games. Wait, let me prep this. Here we go. The core 4. All right. The first game that we're going to cover in depth here, very exciting one between the Carolina Panthers at the Atlanta Falcons. The game has been slapped with a 54-point total. The home team, Falcons, are coming in as 2-point favorites, John. And we just saw this Atlanta team get absolutely decimated, I'm going to say mildly predictably, on Monday night by a Packers team that is hot, that always wins on Monday night, and that comes with a very, very underrated or under-the-radar pass defense. Elite cornerbacks at all 3 spots for the Packers. Now they're going to take on a Carolina team that brings a cachet of being a terrible defense. And the first thing I want to ask you here about this game, this is an exciting game, high scoring, close. It projects the best from a Vegas line standpoint of all of the games on the slate. This one projects the best, high scoring and close. But I have a question for you, John, and this is really going to be important. Carolina right now is ranked number 3 overall at limiting fantasy scoring to opposing wide receivers and quarterbacks. Now, I want to know how much weight should I put into a ranking 4 weeks into a season? I mean, it's noisy. It could partially be due to their opponents. Maybe they're really bad against the run, so teams haven't bothered to pass. How much do I need to weight that? Because my first look at this game was load up on Atlanta. My second look was, wow, this actually isn't that great of a matchup for Atlanta. And it's against the wide receiver position that they have the higher ranking. And so now I'm just like, I don't know what to do.
I think you have to then go back and look at each one of these games, right? So Raiders, wide receivers,
I mean, but there's the Dallas and wait, I'm looking at the Falcons here. Hold on, let me look at the Panthers.
So Carolina's played the Raiders, they played the Chargers, the Bucks, and the Cardinals.
I mean,
right?
Is it that they just play? I mean, Raiders don't really have any wide.
Raiders have nothing at wide receiver, right? Yeah. So you've got the Chargers who don't throw much, not much at the wide receiver position. Now the Bucks, they've been a little banged up. We've talked about the fact that they were a lot banged up. And we talked about the fact that we were expecting low expectations here for the passing game from the Bucks. I think last week was the bigger surprise. We expected more out of Hopkins. But again, if you look at the wide receiver core as a whole, it's a fairly weak wide receiving core for the Cardinals outside of Hopkins. When we're targeting Arizona, I think we've said this on this podcast or others. Now it's strictly Hopkins. So I'm not going to get too excited here about the Panthers being able to shut down. This is a thing now where we're just going to fade wide receivers and quarterbacks against Carolina. I just don't. I'm not ready to jump on that one yet. This will be a pretty good test with the Falcons. Although we are going to be. Are we going to be without Julio? Is that definite?
I'm very confident that Julio will not play. And by the way, I didn't give exact numbers on that. There are varying numbers on that defensive score that defensive ranking for the Panthers. Some will include information from last season, some this season, but they're seventh in yards per pass so far this season allowed. So there's varying statistics on this, but more importantly, and just I want to understand how much we can weigh this year versus last, how much we can weigh the defensive statistics from the first 4 games, or should we still really be accounting for this going back to last year? When do the stats start to really tell a tale?
It's hard in football with the stats just because there's just so few games. But the most important thing, obviously, with football is just usage and how players are being used. So I think after 4 weeks, we do get a fairly good idea of just how coaches are using players, and then we can use that as a guide. I think the first 3 or 4 weeks, it's a little bit of a guessing game. We have an idea. We've got a bias maybe going into the season. I think it takes at least 4 weeks. I think this is now the point where we say, okay, if a player hasn't done it in the first 4 weeks, or at least if the coach has not put that player in the position to do it, then it might not be happening. We were worried about that with Mixon last week, and that's the reason that ownership was so low, because we knew the talent's there and they just haven't been using him. But we said, okay, he's in a great spot. This is the week. So it's going to be tough if they haven't used the guy the way that we thought they were going to use that player. Come week 5, it's going to be hard for me to get on that, to be too excited about that player coming in to the 5th week.
There's another interesting factor like that in this game that we could talk about. So I love this game from just both sides' perspective. What we do know for sure is Atlanta's defense is absolutely horrific. Absolutely horrific, especially, and this is crazy, to tight ends. I mean, Robert Tonyan. It's a who's who of unknown tight ends that have destroyed the Panthers, the Falcons week to week. I don't have again, I got to look at their opponents, but it's been every week that the tight end position has gone off against these guys.
They play decent tight end, right? So Schultz has been pretty good.
Yeah, Dalton Schultz had a huge game against them. I think it was against Chicago. Was that the game where Jimmy Graham came in and tore him up? And so tight ends have done really well, and we've got like this oddball guy that we liked in the offseason, Irv. I think it was
Ian Thomas you're talking about?
Yeah, Ian Thomas. He hasn't done much, but man, could we get to him?
He doesn't. I just don't think he gets enough targets. And their wide receiver, the wide receivers here for Carolina, I really like in this game. It's interesting.
Let's throw this out there. You've got Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore. Now, coming into the season, the hype. Listen, DJ Moore was coming off a spectacular year last season. He looked great. Kyle Allen looked great. Now, Robbie Anderson has been producing, but if you look at the statistics, Moore and Anderson are within 2 targets of one another. So they're both being targeted about the same, but it's Anderson who's produced. Is this the time where things level out, and is this the DJ Moore game? Feels like it's time, but I definitely love the passing offense and the whole offense for the Panthers in this spot. I mean, it's one of the absolute defenses to target this season. You need to go after Atlanta, whoever they're playing against. Can we get on, DJ Moore here?
I think so. So I was looking at just trying to prep a little bit for next week and looking at that. And Robbie Anderson's definitely been the guy, and I like the matchup really for all 3 of their wide receivers. So that's not going to be a problem as far as matchup. So it's just going to be a matter of where they go. I mean, Anderson has been one of the top guys in fantasy points per route in the whole NFL.
I mean, he's been great actually going back to multiple seasons, but so was Moore.
Right. Exactly. So, I mean, I don't know if I'm ready to. I know a lot of people have said, you know what, it's now Robbie Anderson, and it's not DJ Moore. I got to look at the exactly where those points are coming from. I'm not sure. Has it been more touchdowns? That's the one thing I didn't get a chance to look at.
I mean, DJ Moore is definitely not scoring touchdowns.
I know he's not scoring. So is Robbie Anderson just getting because I feel like if you're getting the touchdowns, a lot of time there's a little bit of luck because
he only has 1 touchdown on the season, So no, it's just been big plays, and crossing the 100-yard threshold.
Mm-hmm.
He's crossed 100 in 2 games. He hit 99 in the last game with 11 receptions. So he's just getting there with volume.
Yeah, they're targeting both guys in a similar fashion. So if he's getting the big plays, that's where it's coming from. So I think your upside is probably more with Anderson, but I I would not. I wouldn't shy away from more. I like both wide receivers here in this game.
Yeah, but you got to play a little. I think Anderson is, for all intents and purposes, right now has to be treated as a lead dog. But I just think DJ Moore is going to catch up. He's a supreme talent, and there's no reason that what he's doing shouldn't match Robbie Anderson. It's just a matter of time. And this is a game where both guys can be fed, and Chris and Davis, the running back. The hell's his name?
Mike Davis.
And Mike Davis, the running back, could be fed. I love that Mike Davis catches passes because we don't even have to disinclude him from stacks with Teddy Bridgewater. He's in it.
That's right.
Because he catches passes. All right, so load up on this game, guys. The flip side, I don't think Julio Jones. My favorite play on the – you know what my favorite play on the Falcons is? It's Russell Gage. I love Russell Gage.
Yeah, well, you've talked about this, and we talked about it together with when that number 1 wide receiver goes out, sometimes that number 2 guy is just not the guy. Really didn't look great when Jones was out on Monday night.
Got the hammy and a terrible matchup in that game, but a hammy.
Yeah.
Hammy.
So it could be a situation, where the number 2 who Gage will now be the number 2 wide receiver in there gets the love here in this game. So this is a game, we're always looking for game stack. This is a game that is very stackable as a game, and you can go down here to the second options really on both teams, and and not pay a whole lot for Teddy Bridgewater, and really have a cheap stack that could work in a lot of these big GPPs.
You want a name in this game because we're going in depth on this one. A name in this game that no one has ever heard of that will surprise you. I don't even know the first name. That's how obscure this player is. But Zach House, the number 4 wide receiver for the Falcons, 9 targets, 8 receptions last week, 86 yards when Julio came out. 3K on draft. You want to talk about a turd? That's a fucking... Hold on. Oh, I got something for this. Zach House. 3K, playable on the main slate. What say you, John?
Yeah, I mean that was driving me nuts because we talked about this before we went on. I was long the wide receivers from Atlanta in that game or in the 2-game slate.
And getting Zach House in your lineups, man?
I did not. I had a lot of Ridley and a lot of Jones, and that did not work out well. So yeah, every time they were looking the other way to guys that we just never even heard of. It was
Alex telling us how to pronounce it. Zacchaeus.
Yeah.
What's the first name, Alex? You want to be a big shot? How about the first name? I don't even know what it.
It's I couldn't pronounce it, but it was driving me bananas listening to it every time.
I don't know what his first name is. Zacchaeus. All right. Let's move on to the next feature. Oh yeah, some people know him. All right, Craig's like, yeah, he knows Zacchaeus. All right.
He had a big. I mean, people are going to look at it just because of the primetime big game. But I wouldn't get too excited here. I'm
putting this guy on my. I'm going to grab him for my dynasty teams, and for my emergency need. One of my teams, I have an emergency need for a wide receiver. Olamide going to be on my team.
I got Gage in some keeper leagues, but
Gage
we'll see how that works.
Gage is on every best ball team I drafted this offseason. All right, next game in the core 4. Moving on. Another exciting one. We've got the Texans taking on the Jaguars. 54.5 point total with the home Texans coming in as a -6 point favorite. Now, the Texans fired their head coach, and there's something about that, John. Something about that always. I know it sounds intrinsic. I know it sounds like, what the hell do you call it? Cognitive bias or whatever. I don't know what the right word is, but is there something to the fact that when a team fires their coach, they play better in the next game or two? Is there something real to? Is there a betting angle to that?
Not particularly. It doesn't really work from a betting angle. But I know people generally like that. I do think it's a benefit when it's a coach that people don't like, and Bill O'Brien is a bit of a dick.
Well, I think the players are happy to get rid of that guy. And
when the players are happy to get rid of a guy, there could be something to that. I know that I just saw the report earlier today where J.J. Watt had gotten in a big argument with him right before he got fired. So, I don't think the players particularly like him. I don't think people around the league particularly like Bill O'Brien. And quite frankly, I think he was a pretty shitty coach. I don't care what the record was going in. And certainly as a GM, he sucked. So
a coach that made his players worse. He had all the talent.
Now they're bringing in Romeo Crennel, not bringing in, but they got Romeo as the he's not exactly the answer either. So he hasn't been the greatest of coach. It drives me nuts when these guys come from, they've got now Romeo is obviously the defensive guy, but when these guys, these coordinators, especially offensive coordinators, have these Hall of Fame quarterbacks, and then they get a head coaching job somewhere, as if Tom Brady and Peyton Manning were made by their coaches and not them. So, Gase and these guys they make a career.
Crennel is not the long term.
No, Crennel's not the answer.
He'll hold down the fort. Like when the Jets fire Adam Gase in the next week or two, it's going to be Greg Williams holding down the fort. Now, Greg Williams he's the last guy I want as my head coach. The last guy. He's like borderline Adam Gase level, but. All right, he'll hold down the fort for the season, and then we'll see what happens. But, all right, let's talk about the game environment itself. So, the Texans, again, murderer's row first 3 weeks. Coming off of that, they finally look good. Last week took them a minute. Still, they got the offense going. They got the offense going eventually in that game, outside of Brandon Cooks, who destroyed a lot of cash lineups. Not mine, but a lot of other ones last week. With the 0, but I can actually go back to Brandon Cooks this week, as crazy as that sounds. At 4,100, I'm fine with it. I think it's a Randall Cobb week, though. The defensive matchup does favor Cobb in this game. Actually, the Jaguars have done very well against outside wide receivers so far this season, oddly enough. I can't get on board with David Johnson. Jaguars are so bad versus the run. That's the mix-in game. But I can't get on board, John. Convince me.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, the numbers say you've got to take you got to be on board here with Johnson. I mean, it should be one of the higher. We should be able to run the ball pretty well here against Jacksonville. I'm gonna be in a similar. I'm gonna be similar to Mixon last week. I'm like, I think this has got to be. It's got to be a David Johnson week this week. You got to change. Hopefully, maybe a change of philosophy.
What if there's never a David Johnson week?
Well, again, this has got to be it, right? You're a favorite. They're favored in the game. These are the type of games that we do like. The running back, when you're a decent favorite, close to a touchdown favorite, against a team that is susceptible to the rush. It's also David Johnson can still catch passes as well. I'm not going to give up on David Johnson here in this matchup. I like the matchup. I like the Houston offense here as well. They burned me last week. I think they burned a lot of people, like you said. I had Cooks in my high stakes lineups, and that was another killer.
That's a bummer.
Yeah, it was a killer. But yeah, the what happens. They're going to come back here now this week, and they're going to be light owned because of that fact. Because people don't like to bet on teams that burn them, and they don't like to come into they don't like to take players in fantasy that have burned them. Be it season long, people won't draft the guy who burned them the year before, and they won't come back week to week when a player burns them. So you'll see lower ownership on Houston in a matchup that is favorable. I like it here, and just got to look at just trying to look at the wide receiver matchups quickly. They're in very favorable matchups here from a wide receiver standpoint as well.
the Jaguars have done a nice job against outside wide receivers. Just look at the at just the games that they've played and who has performed. Like against the Bengals, it was now their outside wide receivers are pretty shitty. Like I can't really take the statistics of AJ Green, but he's just been horrific. But like the Titans also, again, they didn't have an outside wide receiver who was very good. The Colts don't throw to the wide receiver. I don't know. Sometimes this is what I'm saying. You almost have to throw out these statistics for the year because, again, if you look at who the Jaguars have played, it's like, all right, they played the Colts. Who do they throw to? No one. They just want to run the football. Tennessee, what do? They run the football. They throw to the tight end. Bengals, their premier pass catcher is their slot guy, Tyler Boyd, and we know that the Bengals ran all over these guys and scored everything via the run. As a matter of fact, all of the teams so I don't know if they're legitimately pretty good against wide receivers or it's just teams don't need to throw to them because they're so easy to run on.
I wouldn't be that scared to target wide receivers here against Jacksonville in this game.
Yeah.
Fuller, I think,
Fuller's the guy, right? Fuller's
the guy.
Yeah, he's the big play guy. If you're going to play Deshaun Watson, you've got to play Fuller. It's just those two have to go together because he's the big play. And I think the pecking order here is Fuller, Cobb, Cooks, Fuller, Cobb, the tight end, Akins if he's healthy, and then Cooks in the passing game. Now, I want to talk about the Jaguars because there are some interesting pieces here. The Texans have absolutely been terrible defensively. One of the worst. They keep losing. You don't lose games because you're a great defense. You lose games because you suck. And so they have a good offense, a terrible defense. DJ Shark is back. He's a little expensive, but very playable, big play guy. And the other one that's the surprising name that I'm going to mention, John, Laviska Shenault Jr. Guy came out of nowhere. He's had 6 targets each of the last 2 weeks, 4 targets per week the first 2 games. So the target share has gone up. He's putting up a nice little number. He's 4,500. Seems like an acceptable cash punt type of play on DraftKings.
Yeah, I like Shenault, and he's pretty high points per route run. He's up in the I don't know, probably upper 10% or so of the league. So he's doing well, but Shark's actually even better. But like you said, you could get some exposure to this game at a cheaper price, which I like with Shenault. So this is another game where both sides we're always looking for where can both sides score, and I think you've got that here in this game. I'm gonna give Houston a pass here, and I'm gonna say that this is a game we could see a lot of points. Obviously, Vegas still thinks the high point total is in play. What was it, 56.5 on the total? So we could see a lot of points here. I like being able to pivot to a really good wide receiver option too, and at a cheap price. So again, I think we've got some really good possible game stacks at a relatively low price this week.
Absolutely a game I want to stack around and build around on both sides. And again, just like with the first game we talked about, the more the Jaguars are scoring, the better it is for the Texans, which is why we want a game stack, because if you have a Deshaun Watson to Will Fuller stack, the greatest thing that could happen is, a rushing touchdown by James Robinson on the first drive for the Jaguars, or a touchdown pass to DJ Shark. Like, there's nothing better than the opponent scoring against the quarterback that you stacked with a wide receiver, and especially if you game stack it, hopefully you get the pieces coming back from that other side. All right, let's move on to game number 3 of the core 4. All right, the next one on our list, we've got the Giants heading out to Dallas, where all of the monies are made this season in Dallas. 54.5 point game total. Dallas coming in as a monster 9.5 point favorite at the moment. John, one crazy thing, and I think I'm just noticing about the Vegas lines of these games, they all opened. Now, I'm so the opening line was 44 and it was bet up to 54. Is this just a function of this season and how the games have been just high scoring? Or are some of these opening line numbers that I'm seeing here, like from multiple weeks ago, which is why it looks like it's shifted so dramatically. But it's not like it shifted like, a couple days ago. It probably shifted weeks ago.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, that line wasn't
like
a Sunday line and then popped up to 54. But yeah, we talked about these totals. The Vegas is caught up now. It took them 3 weeks. Week 4 they caught up. I think the totals were 500 on the over under last week, and we talked about just how high those totals were. We saw like 7 or 8 games over 50, which I don't think we've ever seen before. And I had mentioned, we weren't sure, was the lack of fans going to have any influence. We saw it in the NBA with penalties. So I started looking into the penalties. And in actuality, we talked about this before, you and I, before we went on the air. The penalties are down, which is actually what's increasing the scoring in the league. And more specifically, offensive holding penalties are down. And I didn't realize this was a point of emphasis for the league this year. They went out to the officials and said they only wanted offensive holding penalties called that were basically obvious and blatant offensive holding penalties. So when I looked at the numbers, you generally get about, I think each team averages about let's call it 1.5 offensive holding penalties per game. We're now down to about 0.75, 0.8 offensive holding penalties per game. That's a significant amount when you take it on a per game basis. And if you look, I believe it's 15.3 yards per point is generally the average team. So every 15.3 yards you gain, you generally have about 1 point on the scoreboard. So if you factor in that offensive holding penalties generally kill drives, let alone not even counting the yardage, but it generally stops the drive in its tracks. And then when you add that yardage on, you can understand why now we're seeing points. We're getting like 2.5 to 3 more points per game, which is just a huge number. But it's what the NFL wanted.
It makes sense if you take essentially what are 2 offensive holding penalties out of each game. Those are 2 drive killers. An offensive holding is a drive killer. It's kind of like that's going to add points. It's kind of like me and Cez on the waiver wire show. I don't know how we got into it. We talked about a little bit how the running actually was a Chris Liss concept that he put out on Twitter that we were talking about, where he was saying the same thing with a running quarterback, where they can run for 1 extra first down on 3rd and 8 over the course of a game, and that just changes the dynamic of how many points are scorable in that game. Like the guy who can't scramble for that, he loses 1 drive, whereas the guy who can, and they usually do that at least once or twice a game, that's like a monster points generating difference maker on the analytics. So another thing that generates more points in the analytics is, like you said, 1 less holding call on the per game that you used to get.
And does it cause you to run the ball less? I mean, that's the next question that I really want to look at. And we've seen this year that the big running backs have not been the big stud running backs who were chalky. We said it last week, like, all right, Kamara didn't kill you, but he didn't give you the big game we were expecting. Zeke didn't kill you, but he didn't give you the big game that we were expecting. And we really that's kind of been the trend here. You brought it up to me on the Wolfpack. You're like, all right, you asked Burns and I, are you looking to change your strategy? I wasn't, but I tell you what, I'm starting to think that wide receivers are a little bit more valuable here, just because I think we're gonna continue to throw the ball more. We're seeing that if they're not going to call these penalties, the wide receivers are becoming a much more viable option here.
The trend absolutely continued last week, where we are nailing our wide receiver picks, and it is so foreign to me because I'm used to nailing my running back picks every single week, and then just kind of like throwing darts at the board on wide receiver and hoping it hits. But we've nailed the wide receivers. I mean, every single week we've been on the right group because it's been very consistent. But we've had a hard time nailing the stud running backs this season. So it is a phenomenon that tells me a little bit to get a little more wide receiver action in my flex than what I'm used to or normally comfortable with. I'm starting to do it, man. I already made my first lineup this week, and it did feature wide receiver action in the flex position. So, man, I'm ready to flow with the times. I don't want to be behind the trend. I'd like to get ahead of it. And I think that is something that might stick. Now, let's talk a little bit more about this game, because this is the sexy game. This is it.
Well, every Dallas game has been the sexy game, so.
Yeah. Now, this one has a slightly larger spread than the last one. But how much worse is the Giants' offense than Cleveland? It's probably a little worse. A bit worse, but nonetheless.
The Giants are averaging.
Yeah,
okay, so I believe the league is averaging about 49.8 points per game. The Giants have scored 47 points so far this year.
But hold up. Remember we talked about the murderer's row. The Giants have faced a pretty close to a murderer's row of defenses to start the league. We knew going into the season, we shouldn't be surprised. We knew going into the season that the Giants were going to have a tough time in the early schedule. This is not a shock. San Francisco, Chicago, Pittsburgh, Rams. Are you kidding me? Are there 4 better defenses? Yes. I mean, you could put the Patriots in there. But there are 4 top 10 defenses that they've faced. So just like last week, we talked about the murderer's row that Houston had faced, and they should loosen up, breathe a little bit. The tie, you go to work. John used to wear a tie to work.
Every day.
Tight. And then the second you get out of the office, you're like, I can breathe now, right? The Giants have worn a really tight tie to work for the first 4 weeks. Rams, 49ers, Bears, Steelers. Now you got the fucking Dallas, the exact opposite. They're going to go nuts.
Yeah, it's
and
brutal.
their salaries are based on going up against elite defenses.
Yeah, it's going to be tough to not play this game again as a game stack. You've got to take into account here, like you said, the just who exactly the Giants have played and now who they are playing. I mean, Dallas has not been able to stop anybody. Here's my fear in this game is Dallas realizes, look, obviously from a actual football standpoint, they've been terrible. This is a game where they possibly just feature Zeke and say, look, we're not going to win by throwing for 500 yards every week. And this is a game where they could pound Zeke. So that's my fear in this game, is where it's really going to be based on Dallas. Again, this is like you were talking about the Russell Wilson situation. Dallas has been involved in I think 2 or 3 situations where both Dak and the opposing quarterback were viable plays in these big GPPs. It happened last week only because of Beckham, but so if you had Beckham with Mayfield, it worked, even though Mayfield didn't really do anything. But the point is, I think we're going to see a little bit of a change here in Dallas. Dallas's game planning. I think we get a little bit more Zeke than we have. I could be wrong, but to me that just makes sense. I don't know if it makes sense to you, but I would change what I was doing offensively here and help my defense out a bit and just try to run the ball a little bit more.
They're going to try. And this game projects differently. This is very much like what we saw with Russell Wilson and Seattle last week. And I think that the safest play on this game is actually on the Giants side because of exactly what you just described. Now, it's interesting, if you go back the last couple seasons, Zeke hasn't been a take over the game running back for a bit for these guys. Like, it's been pretty rare that like Zeke takes over, and even when he has, he usually catch at least a touchdown. They'll throw for one more. Dak usually gets his. But Dak getting his in 26 fantasy points isn't the same as Dak going bananas for 45 Millie-Maker winning fantasy points. Dak at the salary that he's at, which is jacked up based on the performances he's done, at 26, he's not winning you shit. As a matter of fact, I could pretty feel confident that Daniel Jones is going to get us 26 fantasy points for $2K less, a full $2K less on DraftKings. So that you play Jones with Zeke in the lineup. That's the move in tournaments here to get exposure to this game. Zeke, Jones, Slayton, Evan Ingram. No one likes these guys. No one likes them.
I'm done with Ingram, I think.
No, do not.
I know. He is awful.
He's awful. He got 10 targets.
Now he can get I'm talking about football now. Now in fantasy, yeah, he can.
I don't care about football.
I know, but he is just such a disappointing player. But yeah, unfortunately, this is a week where you can't sleep on too many of these offensive players, especially going up against the Dallas defense. So yeah, Ingram's going to be a play, but I'll tell you what, if he looks like shit, that's going to be it for me with Ingram. Talking about the offensive holding penalties, you want to know what's wacky? The Giants of all teams haven't even had an offensive holding penalty called on them yet, which is amazing.
They haven't needed that to slow down their offense. It turns out they just don't have any good players.
It's unbelievable. But yeah, so this is going to be interesting. I like some of the other games better, which is a little crazy. I think Dak has the record now for 4 games in fantasy, most points scored in fantasy over 4 games, which is crazy.
With all that said, play the fucking Dak and his wide receiver. You got to play.
You have to.
Yeah, I mean,
but I think in tournaments here, I think now the way it's being priced, I'd be surprised if Dak is going to be in the. Dak will not be in the winning Millie Maker or big GPP tournament.
We just heard it from the horse's mouth. Dak will not be in the Millie Maker lineup.
You cannot be afraid to fade these top guys in these big tournaments. All right, different story when you're playing in the smaller tournaments or in a certainly in cash. I didn't do it yet. I post the stack probabilities last week. The number 1 stack probability was Dak and Cooper, and they were actually. And then you had asked me to add the prices in, which is really valuable. And when you looked at it on a price per or the dollar per point basis, they were actually fairly reasonable.
Yeah, it was
on a dollar per point
value.
basis. So that's why I used it.
Yeah.
That's why I used them in the. I used them myself, like I said, in the high stakes in it, and really it didn't matter what I did, as long as I didn't totally shit all over myself. I was going to cash with those 2 guys. So yeah, it was valuable. You looked at it, you're like, well, it's the number 1 projected stack, but it's also pretty good value, and it wasn't so ridiculously owned that you needed to be all that much different elsewhere to cash in some of these big GPPs. So yeah,
which is a reminder, and I love that you brought that tool up. Guys, for those of you who are DFS Army subscribers, make sure you're using these tools. We're adding a brand new tool this week that you're all really going to like as well, but use the stack probability tool. We have leverage stack tools. We have cornerback wide receiver matchups. These are all things that DFS Army subscribers have access to, and we're constantly adding new tools to benefit our NFL product and our NFL subscribers. It's the most important thing. We always have to keep our edge. Of course, John's power rankings tool is also spectacular. I love it. I use it for my game. We're just adding now a really cool little tool that's just showing snap counts and snap percentages on a game-by-game basis. It's nothing game-breaking, but it's going to show you, and you'll see it under the NFL tab on dfsarmy.com. You'll see this new tool that'll pop up this week. We're just working on it, finishing it up. But it's going to show you a player's average target share, snap share, run share in an offense versus what they did the last week. And it's just going to give us a little bit of sense of some of these players that are getting more targets, more snaps. That's what got me on Tanyan last week, and it's why I got so excited about it when I saw, oh my gosh, this Tanyan guy's getting 22% of the targets for the Packers. Who the fuck is he? And that got me on him. That tool alone, it's visual. It shows it game by game. So as you're looking at each game, you can see really, really easily and very easy to understand snap share, target share, rushing share in the offense numbers for each player. And here, Craig was just in here. He was popping some of that info in about DJ versus Duke versus David Johnson, and how David's only getting like 53% of the snaps and the touches, and Duke is in there at about 40. And for whatever that's worth, basically saying David Johnson is not really playing a workhorse role at this minute. It could change, but interesting information to note. On the Dallas side, I think you've got, if you're stacking Dak, again, you've got to bring it back with a player from the Giants or 2, because the only way that Dak is going off like he did is if the Giants are keeping up. So the Slayton, the Tate, the Evan Ingram, those are the only 3 names on the Giants that anybody knows who they are. Those guys, probably, you need at least 1 or 2 of them. Can we include Devonta Freeman? Oh, it's so gross.
I think Slayton's going to be your guy. I think that's the most upside that you're going to come back with on that side. So I think if it's going to be anyone, it's going to be Slayton. It's it's obviously a favorable matchup, but
Ingram too. I'm going to put Ingram in the category. Ingram can score the touchdowns. He could be the touchdown catcher. I know you hate him, but I mean,
no, I do, and he gets, he gets a fair amount of targets. So that in that, by just that alone, you have to take him. He just drops so many balls. He's so irritating to watch play. But
I hate judging talent. I really
I know. Exactly.
I don't like judging it, because it's like then they look good. Then they're in the NFL. Like, yeah, he drops passes. It's fucking frustrating.
His catch percentage is 59%. His catch percentage on passes
thrown to
him. It's so bad.
It's not great, but I mean, he had a 2-7. And again, murderer's row of defenses. Guys, this is the situation to target. Giants are coming off the murderer's row. Every one of their offensive skill position players is underpriced based on going up against an average team. They have not faced average defenses this season, and it's artificially depressing the salary. So when salary cap is a concern, you've got to take that into account. Most people don't. We just look at the game logs. It's really brutal, but let's account for the fact that we didn't play these Giants guys in any of these weeks because the matchup was terrible. It's not like I've been losing money on the Giants. I haven't played them. The matchup was bad. I didn't play them. So there we go. Love this game, but I like the Giants side, maybe even a little bit more from a safety point of view than I do the Cowboy side, but stack it up, go crazy. And if Dak is going off, it's because the Giants are also scoring. So keep that in mind when you make a Dak Prescott lineup. All right. Let me go to the last game on our card here. Wait, did we do them all? Raiders KC. Final core game. This one's less sexy than the other ones, but it's got a giant game total, so we have to talk about it. 56.5 points. Kansas City at home, 13-point favorite. And John, I got to say, watching the Chiefs versus the Patriots, the crowd noise was a factor. They allowed 22% capacity in that stadium, and you could see that the noise was affecting the players, like as if the stadium was full. What the hell?
Yeah, like I said, it's. I don't know how much they're pumping into the actual games. I don't know what's going on, but yeah, there is definitely noise at some of these stadiums. I don't know how to factor it in.
There's crowd though. They
there is some crowd, but yeah, little by little. Well, I think here in Florida, that's we're going to start getting more and more. Now Tampa, Miami, Jacksonville.
13-point favorite. That's a lot against a pretty decent Raiders team so far this season. They've been a good running game. They've been solid defensively. I'm not going to say great, but solid defensively to start the season. 13 points, man. It's just this. You smelling a bet here?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm going to be on any side, I generally don't like to bet against Mahomes here because he outperforms the model. There's a couple of guys. It's Mahomes. Brady's probably not in that category, but he was. Same with Breeze, Rodgers. It's tough. So when I've got to play against them in the model, I tend to just disregard it and then just not make that play, just because they cover at a higher rate. The best quarterbacks do cover at a higher rate. I mean, it just sounds silly. I guess it doesn't sound silly. It sounds obvious, I guess. But you've got to have a really good reason to bet against these guys. And generally, I like to do it with another top quarterback. So if I'm going against Mahomes, I'm going to do it with one of the top guys. So I wouldn't put Carr in that category. So this game's going to either be, this game's most likely just going to be a punt for me. I'm not going to touch it.
I like Jacobs. I like the running back for the Raiders here, even in a negative game script.
It's tough. Yeah, it's going to be a tough situation when you've got to keep up with the Kansas City offense.
Is it too risky to play Jacobs in cash? Again, good matchup.
Yeah, I think it is.
Okay.
I think it is. I got to look at the whole board. And now I'm fine. And I just got a note that Tennessee might be forfeiting this week for breaking protocol, which would eliminate one of the top running backs.
We're gonna get to that on the speed round, but are you seeing something right now?
Someone literally, I just got a message as we were talking, so that's that could eliminate one of the top. Although he's playing against Buffalo, but yeah. So I'd have to look at the whole card, but I feel pretty confident. Jacobs is not one of my better options here this week. I just don't like to play I don't want to play a running back in a situation where they're double digit dog in a game against a high powered offense where they're gonna have to throw the ball quite a bit.
Everybody's a cash lock. No. Kyra is never a cash play.
See, I don't like taking big. I think the theory is they're going to be losing and throwing a lot. That might be true, but Kansas City's defense is pretty good, and Kansas City is always in this situation. So go take a look at my numbers. I'm going to look at it right now.
Kansas City's pass defense is elite. Oh, he was painting.
Right. So here's the thing. So I assume he was. Yeah, I assume that was a joke. But you look at Kansas.
If he knew what song I have that's not quite uploaded yet, guys, I'm sorry. I have something so great for that question, but you're gonna have to wait to one of the other shows this week to see it. But trust me, I've got something in my back pocket that's coming. All right.
So we know, but we know like Kansas City's offense has been prolific, right? So every week people say, I think the layperson sits there and says, well, whoever they're playing. It's always a similar situation.
They're going to have to throw.
They're going to have to throw. They're going to have to throw. They're going to have to throw. Yeah. Well, go look at my numbers. They're one of the top teams against the pass, and that's a yardage. That's just strictly yardage. So you're talking about a team that generally people are throwing the ball against them week in, week out, and yet they're still keeping it low. Like if their number was negative on my sheet, if they had a negative number on defense, but you would basically pass that off and say, well, the defense isn't that bad, but everyone's throwing against them.
Yeah,
exactly. Fourth quarter, people are putting 150 yards up on them. That's not happening, which is impressive, right? So when they get in games, granted, you watch the game on Monday night, they're playing, Hoyer at the quarterback. I get it, but offense didn't look great. It's Belichick. He was able to shut them down, and like I said, granted, it's Brian Hoyer. Not the best of quarterbacks, but they shut them. They couldn't do anything.
Hoyer
against
not
them.
So great. Studham not so great.
No.
We'll get into that. But,
so I'd be very leery in a 2-touchdown type of situation. Kansas City. I don't like. I don't like the Vegas side of this game.
You don't want anything to do with this game, it sounds like.
I honestly probably don't want anything to do with the game. I don't like taking huge favorites as well.
What my favorite play? Wait, one of my favorite plays of the week, and definitely one I love in this game is Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I do want to play him.
That would be
I want to load up on him.
I think that would be the best. I think that would be your best option in this game.
He's one of my favorite plays of the week. Listen, here's my reasoning, John. Number one, Hilaire's coming off a bad game, and I always like that from a ownership point of view. But people start to think that maybe this guy's not that good. They're not producing to the running back position. Kansas City is a team that produces to the running back position no matter who it is. Okay? You remember Damian Williams in the playoff last season. You remember just all of these great games. This is a team that is not poison to the running back. He had a bad game. You know what? Did you see what happened on the goal line last week? They hand one to, a trick play goes to Hill one way, a trick play goes to, like the fullback the other way. Like there were two goal line scoring opportunities where they ran like a little like tricky kind of play, and it just was bad variance for Helaire. I'm ready to go right back to that. He's cheap enough, he's got a floor of about 15 fantasy points in this spot, and everything favors the running game here, especially defensively. This isn't the Patriots. We're talking about, the Raiders, who are good but not very good. So, I don't believe he has trouble. I just think he didn't score last week because they gave it to someone else. I'm not ready to chalk up, this as like a Devin Singletary can't get in the end zone scenario. I just think, that was last week, and this week will be different.
Yeah. Plus, I think you could get a ton of points here with him in the passing game as well, which I was like. I think he's a solid play this week as well.
All right, awesome. All right, let's transition over to the lightning round, where we're just going to go through each game, a betting angle or two, a DFS play or two. We'll hammer through them. There's a little bit to talk about. Some of these games are crazy. We got a game that might be forfeited. So let's move on to the lightning round. All right, lightning round. First game we're going to talk about here is the Denver-New England game. We've got a little Corona thing happening for New England right now. Don't know what the story is. Game is off the board, so I don't even know how the fuck that works. That you can't take bets on it. This one might be postponed for all we know.
Can't take any bets on it right now because the obviously quarterback situation is up in the air, so they don't want to take any action on it.
Denver, New England, not that much to talk about. Denver, really an offense you don't want to touch, even if New England has a bunch of injuries. On the Patriots side, Jason Studham. I mean, Corona Cam isn't coming back yet. Now Stephon Gilmore's out. We don't know what the hell's going on with this game.
Don't play the game.
Yeah, just don't fuck with that. All right.
There's nothing worthwhile in this game.
All right. Another gross game, but some interesting angles here. We've got the Rams taking on the Washington football team. 40-point total. Rams 9.5-point favorites at home. Normally I'd be on the running back for the Rams, but it's hard to pin down who that is right now. For Washington, they're benching Dwayne Haskins. The experiment has failed. Unfortunate. And going to what the hell? Kelly at the quarterback position.
Yeah.
Kyle
Allen.
Kyle Allen. Yeah, Kyle Allen at the quarterback position with Alex Smith waiting in the wings. So does Kyle Allen change? Can I play Terry McLaurin here?
McLaurin's your only. I mean, you could
Gibson,
but I don't like it here. I don't like that matchup.
Jalen Ramsey is
no. I think it's a game you're going to pass. Just to correct you, it's 45 on the total.
What did I say? It opened at 40. It's 45 right now.
So it's 45 on the total.
Yeah, you're right.
And 7. So I mean, obviously the projection on the Washington side is that they're going to score very little points here in this game, which is likely. The Rams should be able to hold them down. I don't like McLaurin. If you feel the need, you have to play, you have to play him. But I think there's going to be better options out there. I'd pass. I do think it's an upgrade in quarterback. I think Allen's probably a little bit better here than Haskins, but not enough where this is a game I want to target. I don't want to really target against the Rams. I mean, and again, this falls into the category. Yeah, can we put some points up possibly against Washington? Sure. But I think again this suits well. This game fits well for the running back situation. But of course, we have a running back situation that we're not 100% clear on right now.
Can't figure it out. Don't want to mess with it. Don't mess with it. That's the best way. There are other players, other plays to target this week. All right, next game on the lightning round. It's another gross one because we could get a cancellation. Tennessee Buffalo. I don't even want to talk about it.
Yeah, so just briefly, I'm literally reading it as we go here. Apparently, they had 15 players had a workout. They were not supposed to work out at all together, and they did a secretive workout. So, and then another player or two is tested positive.
On Tennessee?
This is just what I'm trying to read this as we go. So they were threatening them with actually forfeiting the game, which would be a loss and a free win here for Buffalo. I don't know if they'll actually do that, but I think that game's very much in jeopardy, so don't plan on it
I got to tell you, even if they do play that game, I'm very worried about a team that hasn't practiced in 2 weeks. Out and just showing up on Sunday to play a game
against a really good team right now. Against a really good team right now.
Yeah, this is gross, man. As a matter of fact, if that line is legit at -1 Buffalo and you can hammer it somewhere, I don't see where it's on any books right now. It seems to be off the books.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough game to bet right now.
I would bet that shit though. I'll take Buffalo -1.
Yeah,
all day if you could. I mean, this is a corona ravaged team that has not practiced in weeks, and they're just gonna if they play. They're just going to play. Do not play anybody from this. I'm fucked. I got Derrick Henry on all my season-long teams. Thanks fucking, Adam Humphries and whoever's spreading the Rona around over there. But, you're messing up my fantasy team. Don't like it.
Yeah, it's a mess.
All right. And next up in the lightning round, we've got the Cardinals taking on the hapless New York Jets. Cardinals coming in as 7-point favorites on the road in a shockingly high 47-point game total. Joe Flacco, the ancient one, is coming in to helm the Jets. He's got his old partner in crime, Bashard Perriman, back for this game, and Le'Veon Bell. This feels like we just traveled back in time to 2014.
Well, 47 is the old 44. So. It seems high, but it's actually under the league average right now in points scored. And it's a Flacco game. Obviously for the Jets here, there's nothing you can like. Possibly
I can't even go to. By the way,
I'm saying this because I have to. But what you've got Herndon at the tight end, who's been terrible, but it is Arizona. It's not like I'm going to play him, but he's probably the only thing you might even want to look at. No. I'm not playing him. I'm just throwing him out there because we're doing the show.
It's Le'Veon Bell. Le'Veon Bell with Flacco at the helm might do better than Le'Veon Bell did but I don't think so. But maybe he's a little better if he's cheap enough, and the Cardinals can't stop the run.
Well,
I don't know. Reaching. I don't want to play the Cardinals here either.
I'd have a hard time. And again, it goes back. if you play Arizona, you're playing one guy at wide receiver. That's it, and that's Hopkins. Don't play the other guys. I don't like certainly not Fitzpatrick and Kirk. So if you have to do it, you're always going to be paying up because Hopkins is always going to be your one of the top most expensive guys on the slate. So probably better options elsewhere, just because not that I think Nuke does well here, but we've got so many good cheap stacking options this week that. This isn't one that I'm
you will ruin your
at.
team by paying up for Nuke this week, and it doesn't set up as a game that where they're going to need to get 40 points out of Nuke, 40 fantasy points out of Nuke to win. So, all right, he got you 28, cool, but if you have to pay 8,500 and there are 3 wide receivers in the high 5s, low 6s that get also 28 points, you ain't winning shit in tournament paying all the way up.
Well, can this be the Drake game though?
It could be.
Yeah, this is a mixin type of play, type of look here. So I think give more than a little lip service to Drake in this game.
Yeah, the harder it is to pull the trigger sometimes.
I know. Well, I told you that the tougher the bet, the better it generally is.
Yeah,
so.
It's going to be really hard to pull that trigger on Drake after seeing the way they're using him. But who knows? All right. Next game in the lightning round. Eagles at the don't want to go to the Steelers. At the Steelers. By the way, I just want to go back to Arizona defense is a great play in that other game.
Yes.
That's the play. All right, always play the defense against the Jets. Here's another defensive play that we're interested in. Steelers at home taking on the Eagles. 44-point total. Which is, in a previous year, like 30. Steelers are favored by 7 here. They're getting the Terminator back, or not the Terminator back, but they're back with Deontay Johnson. The Terminator's there. They got all their weapons in place. They got an extra week to rest those creaky ankles with the cancellation last week. And they're taking on an Eagles team that, yes, is coming off a really, 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 really surprising win, but has otherwise just looked terrible all season. I don't know if Carson Wentz is actually good. They don't have any wide receivers on this team to speak of. They're down almost their entire offense. It's a brutal spot. Miles Sanders, love the kid, but you don't want to play running backs against the Steelers either. John, is there anything on the Eagles side that we even want to sniff?
No, the Eagles side, you're not playing any of this.
Now, what about on the Steelers side here? I mean, I like Deontay Johnson, man. Kid's so priced, and maybe the Terminator comes out and changes history for the good.
I think you've got some options on the definitely on the Pittsburgh side. It's scary because you just don't know. They've got such good. They've got such good options. They're one of those teams where they could go any way. I mean, I was kind of looking at what. Even Claypool, what's his price? He's got to be a cheap punt play now. What's his price this week? 4,100.
I mean, that's only a DraftKings possible play anyway.
Yeah, possible punt.
Yeah, you're talking about Claypool.
But I wouldn't do it just because the game itself is not going to be high. Like if I'm going to play a punt, I'd like to do it in a game that's going to be high scoring, where a guy could, where there's going to be multiple touchdowns around. So I wouldn't do it here. But keep an eye on Claypool in future weeks. This is. It's probably a decent. I'm just looking at the numbers here. Could be a decent Connor week. And
Brenneman is just goading me to play the Hell No song. Like he's just goading me.
No. Yeah, I'm just reading that. I'm reading that now. No, you don't want any of this. You don't want any of this from the Philadelphia side. No.
Hell no. Don't play players against Pittsburgh, especially on a team without an actual offensive line like the Eagles. No, there's no reason to. But again, you could play some. Yeah, the only guy that's interesting to me is Deontay Johnson in this entire game. Again, Connor a little bit, and Deontay Johnson because Deontay's just the fucking GOAT, and he's the number one wide receiver. But people perceive it to be Juju. So until they figure out that it's actually Deontay, he's a little bit underpriced based on his role. But I don't know that they're going to need to do that much in the pass. Steelers are another team. I want you scoring against them so that they have to throw.
Yeah, I don't love Deontay Johnson. I do agree with you. He's probably the number one guy here, but I would take a shot if I'm gonna. I would take a shot with Juju before Deontay in this game.
Yeah, see, I'm a Deontay believer. I'm a Deontay. Ooh, put it on the wall, baby. Side bet. I say Deontay outscores Juju in this game.
All right, I got it.
Put it on the board. There we go.
You got to bear with me. I'm dealing with tendonitis.
Old guy. No wonder they thought you needed a fucking senior discount.
I'll tell you, man.
At the barber shop.
Unbelievable.
All right, next game. Next game on the lightning round. Where are we? We talked about Cincinnati, Baltimore. It's another gross game, man. Cincinnati, Baltimore. Lamar Jackson. All right, I'll give you the numbers. Cincinnati, 13-point underdog on the road, going into Baltimore, 46-point total. Now, I don't care what the statistics say. Baltimore is an aggressive, nasty defense. Okay? Yeah, their statistics were harmed by Mahomes putting up a nice number on them, whatever. They're a nasty defense, and a rookie quarterback against this blitz-heavy, pressure-heavy defense, it's not a good scene. It doesn't lead to good things.
They're my number one defense. They're still ranked number one for me.
There you
Baltimore.
go. Like, if you look at DVP, if you look at DVOA, like shit like that, it doesn't show them as the top defense. But you need to throw. That's where knowing the game and watching the games, you got to throw some of that out. 4 weeks into a season, that's what it's been a theme of this, where you could take some of those numbers. Don't always listen to them and believe them. They're good.
Well, I said
They're going to blitz the quarterback. They got a fucking rookie across from them. Mixon ain't going to do shit against these guys, most likely. And what we should see a beatdown here. The only question is, running backs destroy the Bengals, but it's impossible to pick one.
No, yeah, it's tough. Like you said, if you're going to go with running back, then you can't take you can't take Lamar.
Lamar's salary is jacked up so high.
He's not going to. He's more than likely again not going to be the stack that I'm going to want to target here. I'm a big fan of Burrow. Not in this spot though. He's going to have a tough game. I assume this is going to be are they the highest priced defense this week? I didn't look or generally whoever's.
I don't think so because the Jets are on the slate.
Yeah, I was going to say
Patriots in Denver. Patriots got the highest.
Okay.
Jets. So Cardinals on the road, second highest. It's unbelievable.
This is so. Where's
they're
both?
Up there? They're up there.
39. I mean, it's a high price, but it's not my favorite defense on the week. Yeah, high price. Yeah, this game's just not. I'm just not feeling. I'm not feeling a lot in this game. I don't. There's so many better options here.
How different is this week than last week, John?
I know.
So many options. Like I said, it's going to be fun building lineups because you have a lot of pick from. This week, there's not that many. You got your core four. That's why we got the segment. We got little transitions between each segment, except I forgot to do it one time. But next time, going to remember. Those are the games you want to focus on. And then these other games, man, lightning round. Not so good. Not so good. This game, not good. I don't like Lamar Jackson either. I want Lamar Jackson in a competitive game. I'm sorry. I like that it's a crappy defense, and you could play him because I do recall, John, last season, I have memories. And my memory is a game where I didn't want to play Lamar last year because they were going down to Miami. And I was like, what's Miami going to do? And then they proceeded to put up like a 56-3 score. Lamar just scoring at will.
That was like the Lamar coming out party.
Yeah.
So yeah, we didn't know he was going to be doing that. But nonetheless, week in, week out.
I don't target games like that, but
no.
So the question is, should I change my approach and say, hey, let me target these games that look like an easy blowout on paper, but what happens if it goes crazy anyway? Or should I say, let me stick to my process where I like competitive games that will lead to higher scores? You know what I'm saying? Like, I just want to stick with my process and accept that I was wrong that one time, but over time it's usually better.
I totally agree. I mean, I think sometimes we overcomplicate it. So the more things that we could keep at a constant, the better. So you have your process, stick to the process. And I just don't, we're going to be able to, talking about mass entering, when you start knocking out, we talked about maybe not playing Mahomes, not playing Lamar, you're when you fade some of these top quarterbacks for good reason, and I said don't fade just to fade, have a good reason. we've got some decent reasons here. We can fade these games or fade these teams if they don't pop. Like last week, you had
Russell.
certain game. Yeah, if you went exactly, Russ was in a similar situation.
Everybody played Russell, by the way.
Yeah.
He was heavily owned. Like,
Sure.
Quarterbacks aren't chalky overall, but like he was
Right.
12%, 13% quarterback.
Right. Yeah, and I think Dak was like 9% or something like that. So I didn't look what the Dak Cooper. I mean, certainly Dak Cooper OBJ was probably 1% owned or something.
Man,
something
I had
like that.
so much of that. It's crazy. I should have made more money. I just didn't have the right running back group, or I just didn't have Mixon.
I didn't have Mixon either. I'm gonna actually. That reminds me, I will add to the stacking percentage the whatever you want to call it, but I'll make it a 3-man stack with the other receiver from the opposite team as the quarterback. So
Kendrick is asking about Chargers Saints. That's a night game. So whatever tournament it's going to be in, it's not going to be in the one we're talking about today. Certainly
Right.
could lead to some scoring, but we don't need to worry about that on the main
Right.
slate.
Yeah,
Now, all right. Let's keep hammering through our lightning round. I need a lightning round transition, but it's got to be fast, like a 3-second transition, like lightning round. Like something really quick. Then it wouldn't be the lightning round if I got to do like a 10 or 12-second transition.
That is true.
It would ruin it. All right,
This game.
we'll get on that.
I know where you're going now. This is.
Yeah, it's another gross game.
Yeah.
Miami, San Francisco. We're going out to San Francisco. We got to get to the stadium. Got to walk past homeless people everywhere. Step in a little human feces on the way to the stadium.
They're out in Santa Clara. It's a little nicer.
Wait. We step in human feces on the way to the stadium, and then we watch a game that looks like human feces on the field. How do you like that? I brought it all together.
I like the tie-in. Yeah,
I had a tie-in for it.
Yes. This is ugly here.
46-point total. San Francisco, 8.5-point favorite. Is it Mullins? Is it someone else? I don't know who the hell the quarterback is. Miami, a good team against a bad defense, but not so good a team against a good defense.
Yeah, you're not touching Miami side, so the question becomes, what pieces do you like on the San Francisco side? We know the running back situation over there is always, while they can run the ball, it's always tricky because they've got multiple guys who could do the job there.
That's the interest for me. If I can get the running back situation figured out, I think George Kittle is always in play.
Kittle's will play.
Yeah, I mean, like they got a mediocre. I don't think Garoppolo is going to be the quarterback, so it'll be one of the other guys. And it's not even on board. You can't bet this yet. I guess they haven't announced.
Because they're waiting on. Yeah, you got to wait on the quarterback here. So, but Kittle's in a fun. It's a fantastic matchup. So you can't discount Kittle. He's certainly going to be a play. The question is, do I really want to stack Kittle with the? Probably not. Kittle's just going to be in lineups of other stacks. But again, you could pay up now. When we talked about these cheaper stacks, this gives you an opportunity where maybe Kittle in a pretty good matchup here if you want to go expensive at the tight end. That kind of burned me last week where I went with one of the 5 most expensive tight ends. Like I said, in a seemingly good matchup, and in retrospect, probably shouldn't have done it. But if you're going to go with the tight ends here, and again, it's not what I did last week, so I should heed my own advice. I like to take a tight end in a favorable, almost in a similar situation to the running back. I like him in a favorable Vegas line situation, which you certainly have here. Kittle's a little bit of a unique player where he's really more of a number one wide receiver than he is a tight end.
I liked how the backup quarterbacks lean so heavily on Kittle, a little bit more than what Garoppolo was tending to do in those other games. And I'll say the biggest angle for this game is just like Alex is mentioning J-Rock McQuinnan. But we got to see if I love McKinnon. I love him. Love him if Mostert isn't back. If Mostert does come back, I actually think McKinnon might be a little bit over salaried for the role that he might see here at 5,800. I really need McKinnon to be the number one guy. But if he is, then yes, I will take a little J-Rock McQuinnan in this spot, no doubt. He got it all. But again, Mostert could be back. So if Mostert is back, that ruins both of them for me. I can't play either guy. They're both not quite priced the way I need them to be to feel comfortable rostering them this week. I need a one. McKinnon fine if he's got the role. Mostert fine if he's got the role. If they're splitting it, no, there's no way I can count on 55 fantasy points to split between two running backs. So it's not enough to go around for me. All right. Let's see if we got another game here. Just one more game left on the lightning round, guys. Holy shit, we're going to be done in an hour and 30 minutes, John. And we had a long intro talking DFS strategy, bankroll management, some important things. We're still keeping it to an hour and a half, so that's pretty special. Before we hit the last game, guys, I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. Between you and me, you're watching this right now. You're enjoying it. You heard some music. You had a couple laughs. Hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button. And whatever the hell other social media things, subscribe, like, notifications, all of that. It helps us out. It gets the channel noticed. These are pods that we put out public. They're free. The Geeks Vegas lines every single week. We've got a few other public things that we do every week. And we do these to get out there. We like it. We like to hear your feedback. But we need you to smash that like button if you like what you're hearing. Hit the subscribe button. And, of course, if you are not currently – see, I'm saving the last game, John. I smartened up. I was doing this at the end, and that was a mistake. Now I learned that people just shut it off, so I'm going to do this. So, number one, if you're not currently a DFS Army subscriber, I don't know what you're waiting for. We're doing great this season. We've got every sport covered. There is no site like DFS Army out there. Go check out other sites first, please, because everybody who comes to DFS Army goes, wow, I didn't realize how much I was missing. That happens all the time. I wish we could tell you more about all the things we have going on. You got to get in there. You got to see every sport's covered. Shit, I do NFL. Bro, I fucking almost took down the NASCAR tournament this weekend. Now I spent 5 minutes on it. That's how good our projections are and the information in our research station. I spent 5 minutes. Man, I was in first place up until the last 2 laps, finished in 7th place in that tournament. I didn't do any time. Man, it's so hard for me to finish 7th place in NFL. But here's NASCAR. No problem. We're playing MMA last weekend. I almost took it down. Like, we have awesome content for every sport. It's all part of one price. Go there, sign up at DFS Army as a VIP. You can use my promo code GEEK and get 20% off monthly VIP. John, tell me about Sportsbet Army, because I see you guys kicking ass on the regular. I don't even count. As part of Sportsbet Army, I put out live bets on MMA that crushed this weekend. I don't even count that as we're even tracking that. That's just like bonus shit that you get over there. But John, tell me about what you guys have been doing over at Sportsbet Army.
Yeah, it's been great. I mean, between the college football's in the full swing. Obviously, we got the NFL. We're just wrapping up the French Open, which everyone's a little disappointed about. Some people were. I was doing the tennis, and pretty much we crushed it. You
tore up the tennis.
The U.S. Open and the French Open, so now everyone's like, oh, man, we're not getting another major until the Australian in January. Look at what we're doing.
These guys never watched a tennis match.
No, everybody's loving it now, yeah.
We love tennis because John's fucking hitting 9 and 3 on his numbers, man. It's crazy.
Yeah, well, let me tell you, it's, I'm spending hours every night working on tennis, so now I'm going to get a break here now that we're winding up the French Open. But yeah, the guys aren't just throwing. We're not just throwing these games and picks out there like just to give them to you. It's part of the thing. You might see elsewhere, like people just throw picks just to create action. I mean, the guys that we got, myself, Ryan, Anthony are the three main coaches. We got Sniper and yourself doing some MMA stuff. But there's a lot of statistics, mathematical models, and whatnot behind each one of these picks. It takes a lot of time and effort. So if you're interested at all in sports betting as a casual sports bettor, someone who's never bet on sports before, especially now if you're in a state where it's legal, I'm surprised. I was just talking to my buddies last night. I grew up with sports betting from the time I was a kid. That's how we all grew up. Now the guys if you're in your 20s or your 30s, you probably grew up with fantasy and you don't know much about sports betting. So if you're in that boat and you're kind of new to sports betting, you come on over to the Sports Bet Army. You come into the Slack chat, talk to me, ask questions. You know, we try to give as much information as we can. Not only the picks, but we just try to be a little educational if we can be. And I guarantee you will be a smarter, better for signing up. And plus, you're getting to get some pretty good picks.
These guys are tipping their picks. People a lot of times ask, why would I pay for your sports betting picks? Like, anybody can pick the fucking game. What are you paying for? You're paying to learn how to gamble on sports in a wise way, in a profitable way. But you're also paying for the hours and hours of research that John puts in for his own picks, that the guys are putting into the hours of time that go into creating these models. So there is inherent value there. Having someone like John or Anthony or Ryan spend hours and hours researching these games, it's similar to DFS. You could probably do it yourself if you want to spend all those hours, or you pay, $49.99 a month, or even less if you're a DFS Army VIP. Ask about that. Ask John, DM him. Much less for DFS Army VIPs. You just pay a small fee, and it essentially goes to support these guys doing all this research and being able to do this full time. They don't have other jobs. This is what they're doing. So really, really good stuff. Check it out. SportsBetArmy.com. Sign up as a VIP over there if you want to bet on sports, and DFSArmy.com. Sign up as a VIP if you want DFS advice, tools, all the great stuff that we talk about here. All right. And of course, make sure to check out our sponsor for this program, No House Advantage, where you can play props for cash, promo code ARMY. All right. All that stuff out of the way. Final game of the slate. Very, very exciting game. We got the Colts heading out to Cleveland to take on the run-heavy Browns. The Colts, John, this is surprising for me. When I'm surprised, I feel like we should bet it. So I believe there is a bet on this game that we should consider. Unless I'm missing something. I could be. The Colts are 10-point favorites. What the fuck is going on here? The Colts are 10-point favorites? The Colts are 10-point favorites on the road in Cleveland.
No.
Am I reading this wrong?
You read it. Yeah, that's the juice. They are 1.5-point favorites.
Oh, shit. All right. I'm looking at it. I'm like, what am I looking at here? Like,
yeah.
It's a Jew. Oh my God! All right. So, I'm like, wait. Okay, because I'm looking at the screen I'm using right now. Is not my usual screen. It's just for the odds table because I wanted to have the opening odds. It's all right. No wonder. But if it was 10, how great of a bet would that have been?
10, I'd have to. Well, yeah. Then I would be questioning why it's 10, and I'd be nervous to take Cleveland. But no, like, 1.5 is right where the line should be.
All right. Well, at least I recognize an incorrect spread when I falsely see one.
Yes.
All right. 1.5 points. There we go. It that sounds more like it. So the Colts are road favorite, and that is not as sexy of a line to bet.
Now, I told you last week with Cleveland. What did I say on this podcast? I said on the other podcast, the public is going to love Dallas. That game was 4.5, went down to 3.5. It just looked, and what did we say? We're like,
it seems so obvious.
Should be obvious.
Yeah.
And we hammered Cleveland over at Sports Bet Army.
Nice.
I think we might have given that out to. I hope we did. I had.
Was that the free bet?
As a free bet, I hope we gave that out as a free bet. I like when we give out the some free winners to the guys over in the in DFS Army. But yeah, that was one I liked. Anthony was like, what's the game you like the best today? And I said Cleveland because I've just been so programmed when the game just looks when I like a game and it looks to be off, the line looks to be off, we like to take it, and then it also wound up being the game that you wanted in DFS. So, but from a DFS standpoint in this game, these are two teams, these are two quarterbacks at least that I generally want no part of, and the only reason, like I said, Baker turned up in some of the top lineups in big GPPs was strictly from OBJ. It had nothing to do with Baker. OBJ, whatever he scored, 42 or whatever it was. So he was. I think Baker was like 15 points. He got all his points. It was a very odd week because you had a wide receiver get a 50-yard running touchdown, and then he had a 37-yard passing touchdown from another wide receiver. So
I think the only sexy name in this game is. And the one that people are going to want to look at, looking at the Colts side, I just think they're unplayable from a fantasy point of view. Even Jonathan Taylor has now really kind of come back to earth, and we're seeing what he is, which is a timeshare back, borderline growth. Don't play that. It's Kareem Hunt that people are going to want to play here. And
Yeah.
the numbers look okay. I think home, slight underdog. Like the numbers in that regard look okay, but I'm not a big use players against the Colts guy. The Colts, just not a good team to target against. Both of these teams want to run. They're going to slow the game down to the point where the total number of plays is going to be lower than an average game significantly because both teams want to slow that game down.
That's it. I mean, the Colts are just not going to be a team this year that we're pretty much not going to want the Colts. Certainly not in a game stack in probably any game that they play this year, and this is not the one. So these are two quarterbacks that I've been fading all year in Baker and Rivers. So I don't want any piece of them. If I don't want the quarterback, I generally don't want the pass catching options. So Hunt's going to be in play here, obviously, because with Chubb out, and now the backup is or the other who's the big. The big pickup this week for Cleveland. I'm forgetting his name now.
Ernest Johnson or
right.
Yeah, no.
So he's no, and I'm not saying to play him at all, but you might see some people do that thinking that it's going to be a similar situation because you had two running backs that were viable with Chubb and Hunt. I think what we're going to see is now it's going to be more or less Hunt's
it's going to be the
show
Hunt.
here.
By the way, I think Hunt will do fine.
He'll be fine.
Go to him.
Yeah,
but
he'll be fine.
I'm not foreseeing like a 28-point smash game, and he's salaried. He's not salaried like some backup thrust into a starting role. He's salaried like a starting running back, like higher than a lot of other starting running backs. To be clear.
Yeah, the running back. We'll get into that on the Wolfpack show a whole lot more when we start breaking down positions and going into it. Just looking at it, running back's going to be tough, I think, this week. Now that we're going over the games.
I have 3 or 4 that I really
like.
I've
got guys. Yeah, I got guys I like, but it's not. I don't know. I'm gonna have to dive into this some more. There's guys. Obviously, there's guys that I like to play, but I don't see. There's no free.
There's no salary saver here.
No.
There's no bargain. Certainly not DraftKings. There's no player that stands out as a bargain running back, or even a really great value play where like when we pop up the projection. It's showing like 3.8 or 4.2 like you saw on Ron Jones last week. Ron Jones Jr. last week was a 4.2 points per dollar value.
Yeah, he was. I used him in my high stakes stuff.
Yeah, I mean I used him in my cash and it was great. Actually, what I should have done in cash is had him and Mike Davis. I used him and then I paired it with Zeke and Kamara, but I would have done even better had I done him with Mike Davis and
that was
Kamara.
that was my combo. But I used it. Yeah, Kamara. I used Kamara, Davis, and Jones. So, but yeah, I don't see it this week. I don't see it just yet. You never know. Sometimes if
at the beginning of the week, I had hope it was going to be Chase Edmonds, but then Drake had to go and be fine.
Yeah,
ruin it. He ruined it.
Yeah, but again, this is not a game. We talked about this a lot with Burns last week, and if for those who get access to the Wolfpack podcast, I think it's definitely worthwhile to listen to, and we'll get into more detail there. But in these GPPs, especially I like to start with who can I eliminate. I do this in gambling too. When I get to the NCAA tournament, I start with who I'm eliminating before I figure out who's going to win. In these GPPs, I want to start eliminating players and teams, and I think we gave you a lot of options here this week where you want to eliminate. So then we could start laser focusing on some of these games that look a little bit better. But yeah, this is another game that I'm not excited about. Again, OBJ, the only reason he went off was just an odd week. If it wasn't for a long run against a weak defense, and of course a reception from his wide receiver.
Yeah.
He had the wide receiver throw to him. He still has a pretty good game, but not quite the ridiculous performance that he had. And it was the odd situation where the quarterback was fairly terrible again with the wide receiver who was the nuts. So if I don't expect a lot, like I said, I don't expect a lot from Baker against a Colt team that doesn't give up much. So I'm not really high on either of these wide receiver plays, and there's not much I like but Hunt in this game.
No, it's not a great spot. Again, Hunt can just do it on volume alone, but it doesn't scream breakout. All right. That is going to do it, guys. Geeks Vegas line week 5. For content schedule, for those of you who are DFS Army subscribers, as always, we will be back with a showdown breakdown, breaking down a video, and of course our cheat sheets, breaking down tomorrow night's single game slate between the Bucks and the Bears. On Friday, we will be back, John, myself, and a special DFS Army NFL coach, as yet to be determined, kind of looking at tournament strategies and more overall tournament strategies, how to attack them, how to attack GPPs, mass multi-entry. That's what the Wolfpack is all about. We get together and we really get a deep dive into the strategy approach. And of course, I will always be back, as always, on Saturday with the Players Club, DFS Army VIP only breakdown, where I kind of really dive into the slate and get into cash games and 3-max and handcrafting and all the stuff we want to do for the Sunday slate. Tons of content available for everybody. I don't want to go into all of it, but should be another great week. Week 5, let's do it. Let's crush one more time. We've had really, like I said, this is an unusual thing for me. 4 really, really great weeks in a row. I want to keep it going. I want to try to keep it going all throughout the season. We're going to have some misses, but we've had a lot of hits so far. So a great start to the season. I'm excited, and hopefully you guys are doing really great as well. Good luck, and I'll see you guys next week.
The best coaches in the game, we really ain't playing. We regroup up in the Slack chat where the coaches debrief. We be piecing these puzzles, occupy the chunk of the pie. Ain't no lie when we hit the block, helmet's casket is top. You be seeing helmet after helmet, helmet after helmet. First place, second place, 5th place, 8th place, 12th place, 15, 16, 20. So many helmets, you got blurred vision, we got too many. Take your check. Oh man, shit. They got us fucked up. Army, regroup. We pledge always to have that edge. We don't fire warning shots. Competition just dropped. We locked and loaded before